Welcome to No Apologies. I'm Dana Lash. Well, I hope you had a wonderful weekend because your president did. He went to the beach to sink his little old person toesies into the warm sand, maybe sip on a Corona and ponder the fine job that he and his administration are doing thus far. We know he was riding a bike. Maybe he had some ice cream. Now, as Biden was grabbing his beach towel and packing the sand toys, apparently he was informed that there was a problem with that drone strike. This is awful and not funny. It's awful. There was a problem with the drone strike that he had ordered in Kabul against ISIS. It seems like they maybe had the wrong address. Happens all the time, right? I'm sure. I mean, have you ever had a package that you ordered be delivered to the wrong address? Well, this was also like that, but instead of a package, it was death because the missile killed 10 innocent people, including 7 children. 7 children. Now, if you found that out, maybe before heading to the beach and building your first sandcastle, you might want to issue just a little bit of a press release explaining that you droned an entire family, one of whom looked to be like an Afghan informant and or translator, that you droned their whole family by accident. But we actually didn't get a press release. But he did go to the beach. I mean, who cares about optics, right? He had some rays to catch. No disciplinary action is expected, CENTCOM announced in that press conference on Friday. They also added that they're standing by the intelligence leading to the strike, that led to the strike. I got to pause here because they're standing by the intelligence. Did it come from a source whose name rhymes with Schmalaban? Just asking, because it seems like that. I mean, you just had the Taliban they were asking you to take out an enemy for them. That doesn't make any sense. And then you ended up killing someone that the Taliban was going to kill anyway because they're going after and trying to hunt down all Afghan interpreters and or informants. But apparently this all makes sense because we live in a bizarro world where everything is upside down. You drone a family, have a picnic on the beach, right? Seems appropriate because we live in this world where everything is so crazy. We've even lost our ability to even determine what is important to focus on and what is not important to focus on. So case in point, this weekend there were 2 events that happened simultaneously. One received all kinds of coverage. The other, very, very important development, wasn't given as much or if any coverage. In fact, the Biden administration would prefer if you actually didn't know about it. And they've tried to stop that too and make that a reality by restricting the airspace over the area in which this important event was taking place. They didn't want Joe Biden's beach vacay to get messed up. So the important event that everybody ignored was the crisis at the border. That has gone from bad to worse. Actually, it's far worse than worse. This is Del Rio, Texas. And what you're seeing here, how do you describe this but an invasion of people who are not entering the country legally, and our own Border Patrol agents can't even keep up with it. I remember at one point there was someone who was going off of the suggestion of Border Patrol that said that a wall might be helpful, like a force multiplier. But in bizarro world, border walls are bad things except when they surround the Capitol. So we have the opposite. We have wide open borders and we have an administration that essentially gives a nod to everybody and their brothers so that they can come in droves. And Bill Melugin reporting that they're coming in unvaccinated. They're not getting any checkups at the border. There's no vax pass required here. And remember, vaccination is critically important, but only for you if you're going to a bar in New York. If you're from South America or Haiti and you don't live here, who cares? Because the virus recognizes that and therefore stops being contagious. Science. Now, in fact, you can come with a Delta or whatever. Who knows? Bring the kids. I don't even think they get don't know what all. I mean, it looks like a festival almost, where people are just kind of sitting around. Now, apparently the Biden administration is going to finally mandate that vax for the 1 million+ people, maybe pouring over the border. I don't know. No, that's not going to happen. In any case, if you're a person who's desperate for a better life in America, I mean, what the administration has been projecting is hit the border while it's good, and so many people have. We have a legal process through which people can enter, but screw that, nobody cares. It's more than 14,800 people that were counted under a bridge. That's the international road that goes right there, goes into the United States, crosses from Mexico into the United States in Del Rio. And they actually had to pull Border Patrol agents off of everywhere else in the sector. So you have almost 300 miles of border, which now can't even be attended to because everybody's trying to go through everything at Del Rio. And I can imagine how drug cartels are exploiting that huge gap, right? I mean, Border Patrol, this is kind of crazy. they can't even do their job. So instead, now Border Patrol is they're de facto aid workers, feeding and caring for people who are entering illegally. We have open border policies. We have no idea how many people are coming in, who's coming in, where they're coming in from. No way to vet if they have criminal records or anything. So the new idea now, Border Patrol is hiring and training up to 1,200 civilians because they are that desperate. They need that much help to assist with the processing and just going through the surge of people who are just parading right across the southern border. Now, we could have built, had a force multiplier. We could have actually done a million things, like make sure that we're keeping people in, if they're wanting to come and apply for asylum, there's this whole remain in Mexico policy that we maybe could not have suspended that at any point. And also, we could have not allowed people, if they could not provide any kind of proof of vaccination, into the country like is done with American citizens who want to come back into the country. But no, now we're going to have to hire processing coordinators, civilians, and the purpose is to free up agents so that they can go back into the field. Now, civilians are apparently going to perform the tasks that Border Patrol agents perform. So how bad is this crisis on the border? I mean, think about it. I mean, 14,800 people at one point. We need 1,200 volunteers just to process people. And by the way, that was just one day, the 14,800. That's how bad it is. So now the administration, after an entire weekend of relenting criticism, they're now gathering up Haitians that are flooding across the border as well. And they're reportedly, except I talked to a former Border Patrol chief on my radio program earlier today, they're supposed to be putting them on planes and repatriating them, sending them back to Haiti, except that apparently is not really actually going to happen. But if it did, wouldn't that be a contradiction? Because you take in Afghan refugees and then you tell the Cubans to turn around and go back, and then you gather up Haitians that are coming over the border and then you send them back to Haiti. This is Jim Acosta, who finally got that cable news show that he wanted so badly, except the ratings are circling the toilet. He's talking to Alejandro Mayorkas, trying to explain, this is DHS secretary, trying to explain our contradictory policies. Watch.
You talk about this American tradition of welcoming refugees, welcoming people in need. We're welcoming Afghans, but we're sending Haitians back. Is there a contradiction there?
Not at all. Those two processes are quite different. We are bringing in Afghan nationals by air after they have been screened and vetted. That is a safe, orderly, and humane process. That is quite different than irregular migration, illegal entry in between ports of entry in a time of pandemic when we have been quite clear, explicit for months now that that is not the way to reach the United States, and it will not succeed.
So two things here. The number first, that was one of the stupidest questions that I've ever heard asked on a cable news show in my ever-loving life. It was so stupid, it actually killed some of my brain cells without the benefit of alcohol. To compare Haitians with Afghan refugees, and the ones that we've been prioritizing and actually focusing on were the allies, the people who had for years worked with our military, had been in there in the field with our military and served our country while they were in their country, served our country's translators and informants. And comparing that to, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And the second thing is the idea that somehow what happened in Afghanistan, what Mayorkas was intimating here, was safe and orderly. Sure, like the vaccine, safe and effective, okay. And did you know the Biden administration has been sending the message not to come to America in this way, as in like illegally? So here's Mayorkas back in March issuing one of those messages telling people that they shouldn't come, wink, wink. Watch.
We are not saying don't come. We are saying don't come now because we will be able to deliver a safe and orderly process to them as quickly as possible.
Okay, so what I heard was, okay, we want you to come, but wait a sec. Hold up, wait, okay, the past. Because that was then, and that was now, and I feel like this is Spaceballs, right? You remember Spaceballs when they were having that conversation? So that's in the past, correct, that's in the past. So that was now for them then. And this is in the future for us now. So now has passed and it is in the future. So it's all good, right? Come on. So they have in the millions. And now Mayorkas wants to change his tune yet again. So here he is just hours ago at the border. He actually went there. He found it. Watch.
We have reiterated that our borders are not open and people should not make the dangerous journey. Individuals and families are subject to border restrictions, including expulsion. Irregular migration poses a significant threat to the health and welfare of border communities and to the lives of the migrants themselves, and should not be attempted.
So see, is it now again? Or, I don't know, it's a little late though, but good job, right? Good news too, you're living in bizarro world. So our border czar, Kamala Harris, is on the case. Here she is on the border of the 50-yard line at the Howard versus Hampton football game. It's nice to see our border czar, who during a complete meltdown of the border has been to the border for 2 seconds for a photo op. And by the way, she went to the El Paso sector where they already have the wall and actually have no problems with crossing there. I don't know if you knew that or not. She went to this, and she didn't actually even leave the airplane hangar. FYI. You know what she's doing? Staying clear of this border disaster. She don't want nothing to do with it. Just like she got nowhere near the Afghanistan crisis. You might have forgotten that she's around, right? She's the VP. When's the last time you heard from her? In any case, even though we live in bizarro world, apparently not everyone has totally lost their mind. I cannot even believe I'm saying this. This is Jay Johnson. This is Obama's former DHS secretary saying what the border czar, Kamala Harris, should be saying if she wasn't busy trying to get away from everything Biden's doing. Watch.
We have to get control of our borders. 200,000 a month is a lot of people. DHS just released the numbers for August. It's 200,000. August is typically a month where it's very low. And those kinds of numbers and the images you just showed your audience saps the ability, it overwhelms the ability of DHS, the Border Patrol, ICE, to cope with the incoming. It saps the communities on the border. It saps Catholic charities that are there doing their best to clothe and feed the migrants.
You know it's bad when Obama's people are actually saying, now hold up, this is a little crazy. It's a little crazy here. You know it's bad. Now remember, Democrats, they said that they don't want people to come to America illegally. And as they're saying that, they did this. They tried to shove amnesty for 8 million people who came illegally into their budget bill, right? The whole budget bill that Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin are holding the line on. Now, these people who entered illegally, they came long ago to America with their parents. I don't believe that you should hold children, minor children who have no idea what the hell is going on, accountable for what their parents did. Parents, totally, yes, totally fine with that. The parents came in illegally. But rather than have an honest discussion about how that's going to look like and how you're even going to do it, and even putting it up to the people who are paying for everything for the vote, then they try to slip it into a $3.5 trillion budget bill that has nothing to do with people who came here illegally. Because, and by the way, sidebar, I have a caveat to that. I don't hold children responsible for their parents coming in illegally, but when you're in your 20s and you're still bitching about how your parents came here illegally and how there wasn't any opportunity for you while you applied for college and applied for grants and applied for everything else but citizenship, even knowing that you weren't going to be deported under the former administration who had a moratorium on that for 8 years, spare me. But this is how Democrats roll. Now, unfortunately for them, parliamentarian rules forbid them from doing this. So that's not going to happen. But back to the bizarro world, where we focus on what doesn't matter while we ignore the things that do matter. So where was our crack government focusing their attention this weekend? It wasn't on the border. No. Instead, they were focused on stopping the next coup attempt on America. What am I talking about? Apparently, some people, even the Capitol think that even the Capitol rioters deserve to be treated fairly under the law, so they just decided to have a Justice for J6 rally at the Capitol. It was a rally for justice. I guess people hate that. So the Biden administration was all over it. They actually put the fences back up. I thought walls were bad. And unlike the border, they sent in the Capitol Police in riot gear. I felt like, again, I mentioned Spaceballs once already today. We could have used this kind of response from any kind of force in Del Rio, securing that border that the Biden administration is so serious about securing not. So instead, we had stormtroopers in D.C. to stop the next insurrection of unarmed people who may or may not be sober. Well, it turns out nobody came to this rally except like Fed boys. It was a non-event. And honestly, the only people apparently that showed up were undercover folks that posed as protesters. And I am not even making this up. First off, check out these dudes. I have video too. Now, what you're looking at, guys, they're clearly MAGA patriots. Hi there, MAGA patriot. How are we going to get our patriotism on today? They're clearly Trump voters. They all decided at the same time to go to Vineyard Vines and get various designs of the same shorts. And then one of them forgot to bring a different pair of shoes and socks, so he's wearing his dress loafers with black socks. I mean, you know, they have the same military standard issue watch, the same Ray-Bans, the same haircuts, the same stony stares. It's a dead giveaway. Actually, the speculation is that they were all feds, and I would definitely put money on it because they look totally uptight and not at all like MAGA people. So they all go to Fantastic Sam's, and I guess, I don't know, they're fed, come on. But I should point out that there were some arrests. How do, fellow patriots? I can't stop making fun of this. 4 of them, in fact. There was an arrest of this undercover agent. So the Capitol Police saw this undercover agent. This is the moment where they're taking out his leather, you know, like the little TV case that they keep their badge in, right? The little leather, you know, like where they show it on television. That's what that guy just showed the Capitol Police. They walked up to one of the other federal agents and they wanted to know why he was there. This is a clown show. This is such a clown show, and it deserves to be ridiculed and mocked relentlessly, which I am pleased to do. I will do that service for my country. But remember, this is bizarro world where distractions are what matters. And so the Biden administration directs attention and resources to things like the non-existent white supremacy threat. Meanwhile, the very, very radical Islamic Taliban, our Afghan partners take over Afghanistan. Or they send hundreds of police to secure a non-rally in DC instead of sending help to the border where 14,800 people have poured in, and that was just the first part of one day. And they talk about how they saved you a penny on a hot dog on the 4th of July. Woohoo! While the price of a gallon of gas triples. They drone a family out of existence while Biden heads to the beach for some cabana time at the playa, right? So, I don't know. What's happening? This is a crazy world. Everything that matters doesn't, and everything that doesn't matter does, right? And this is the game that you got to play when your presidency is collapsing with one disaster of biblical proportions after another. So you try to change the subject. You try to distract people. It's bizarro world. So you make dumb things like the Capitol riot super ridiculously, endlessly important. And then you talk about white rage and how awesome the economy is. Because if they don't do that, America might start talking about the very real problems they see all around them, all caused by reckless policies of the Biden administration. So coming up, we have more on the crisis at the border and the mass expulsion of Haitian migrants. Texas State Representative Steve Toth joins me to discuss this and how the governor of Texas is signing a anti-critical race theory bill. I want to know what he's going to do at the border, so we'll talk about that. Keep it here. Black Rifle Coffee Company is a veteran-owned coffee company, and they sell Afghans and blankets and boots. And actually, it's coffee. They sell coffee to people who love coffee and also love America. They develop their explosive roast profiles with the same mission focus that they learned while serving our great nation. Every purchase you make, Black Rifle Coffee gives back. So in 2020, they donated over 6 million cups of coffee to veteran, law enforcement, and first responder causes. They get the best beans. They import them all from all over, Colombia, Brazil. They carefully roast them at their facilities in Tennessee and Utah. They have a signature roast called Lava Panther that should also be a metal band name, directly sourced from a small farm in Guatemala. So it's not fall here. Stop telling me to say that the temperatures are cooling off, because they're not. It's approximately 99 degrees in Texas. It is not pumpkin spice season. People are at the beach. Stop. But you can go and you can have some Black Rifle coffee. You can even get a can of 300 and get it out of your fridge and have nice, crack open a can at the beach still this fall. And by the way, you can pick your chosen brew, join their coffee club, have your favorite brew blend roasted, packaged, ship free right to your door, and you'll get special discounts and access to all kinds of stuff. Just visit blackriflecoffee.com/Dana and use code Dana to get 20% off your purchase in your first coffee club order. U.S. launches mass expulsion of Haitian illegal entrants from Texas because they say that they're going to be flying people out, but nobody trusts that, let's be real, because other people are getting flown in, apparently. Texas State Representative Steve Toth joins me now to discuss this and a bunch more. Representative Toth, thank you so much for joining me. Good to see you. So here's the big $1 million question, and I'm sure you and everybody else have answered this. You probably know what I'm going to ask 11 trillion times, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just for the record. So what I hear most from everyone is, well, why can't the state legislature there? Why can't the governor just send the guard on down to the border and secure that border and make it to where people can't come in? There's a lot of nuance in that, and I know that there's a good reason. I'm going to have you address that. So what do you tell people when they ask you that?
Dana, I say if the left can interpose and nullify federal law when it comes to drugs and immigration, then the right has to start stepping up, and we've got to close the border ourselves. I do not agree that we should start listening to the courts when it comes to defending our own borders. We have a responsibility to the people of the state of Texas to step up and defend our borders when the federal government refuses to. So I'm not one of these people that falls in line with believing that the federal government and that we shouldn't defy the federal government when they fail to do their job and they fail to maintain the sanctity and safety of the state of Texas.
I think that's a great answer, because it is. I know everybody sits here and goes, oh, what's federal law? And that's why they haven't done it. And that's why you had
yes.
Jane Brewer and all these other governors in the past get sued. But you make a really good point. So if the federal government is not going to follow the federal laws that they put in place, well, then why should if they get to pick and choose, why can't we?
No, Dana, that's it exactly. I mean, the left has displayed this over and over again over the past 10 years, 15 years. We have federal drug laws, and what do? They nullify and they interpose. They refuse to follow them. They have federal immigration laws. They have ICE detainers that they put in place to pick up violent felons. And what do these liberal states do? They say, no, you can't. And they let them go. They let these violent felons go before they can be picked up. And so we need to do the right thing, but we need to do it for the most moral and ethical reasons, which are to protect the lives of innocent people.
No, I think you make a really great point with that. And in some of these images that I've been seeing, and I think it was Bill Melugin, there were a couple of people that said the majority, for instance, of I think this was maybe Thursday, the majority of the people that they had seen and were kind of processing, I don't know how you can process people that don't even have documentation handy, but that they were processing, they said the majority for that particular day were people who were coming in from Haiti, Haitians that had illegally entered into other Latin American countries who then illegally enter at our southern border into the United States. And we hear from the administration, oh, well, Biden's, I guess this is from his beach. I guess he has Wi-Fi access there, that they're going to load them up on planes and repatriate them, send them back to Haiti. But then I'm also hearing from some within CPD that this is not actually, that's not something that they're probably going to do. They'll probably take them somewhere, detention facility, and then let them go on throughout the cabin, as they say.
Yeah, and so how do you get from Haiti to Mexico? How do you get from Haiti to Mexico?
Well, they border, that's apparently a Democrat's understanding of geography.
Yeah, no kidding, right? It's the island nation of Haiti. How do you get to Mexico? And the reality of the situation is these folks were encouraged to come here. And then what ends up happening is when they come across the border illegally and then they take jobs from Americans, a big part of these third world nations' gross domestic product is money that's sent back to them from the United States to their families back in Haiti or back in South and Central America. And that's what's going on here. I mean, it's just freaking ridiculous. If you look at the pictures that you're showing there, we have 20 times the flow of people coming across our border than we saw under Donald Trump. Donald Trump stopped this. Donald Trump showed some leadership and put an end to this. Not happening under Joe Biden.
Well, and the big concern with the pandemic as well, and that's the thing. Republicans and people on the right, or people who are small L libertarians, they've never been opposed to immigration. It's the illegal entry so that, we have every right as a sovereign nation, every other country does, to determine, okay, we'd just like to know who's coming in. We'd like to know, how many people are coming in. Do they have a criminal record, et cetera, and make that determination. And I think from everything that I understand from so many other sovereign nations out there, we have some of the laxest criteria when it comes to admittance. But, the point that you make too is the resources there, and the resources with Border Patrol agents, the resources with immigration judges. I read a piece just a little bit earlier where there's going to be like 8,000 or so illegal entrants that are going to be taken to a detention center. They're going to stay there for a couple of days while they get their court date, and then I'm sure everyone's going to honor their court date, even though statistically, historically, that actually never comes to fruition. So we are going to have just a block of 8,000 people that we're going to be allowing in, and we can't even accurately vet. So why is it, and asking you this, Representative, why is it that if I go out of the country and I come back in, I have to jump through all the hurdles to go back in to my own country, but I'm including, do you have a vax pass, do you have a vaccine, do you have negative test, when I could really I might as well just go down and cross the Rio.
Exactly right. We make it too easy to come here illegally. We make it too hard to come here legally, and it's just so ridiculous. And then on top of it, while Joe Biden is imposing all of these mandates for vaccines, these folks coming across the border are given a vaccine pass. They're not asked to get their vaccinations. Why is that? If this is so damn dangerous, sorry about that, I'm frustrated. If this is so dangerous, why is it that all these folks coming from South and Central America, which is on fire with COVID right now, they come across the border with COVID, and then we redistribute them to major metropolitan areas across the state of Texas? Why is Texas on fire right now? Why is my county district not on fire right now? Because it's not a big metropolitan area, and we're not getting a huge influx of these people that are coming across the border with COVID illegally. Yet Harris County.
Yeah, I like the math that I hear from the left, like, oh, Sturgis is a big, that's a big transmission event. That's a super spreader event, but this isn't.
No, exactly. It's crazy. This is a major spreading event, and we're seeing the results of it. We only have to look at the numbers. Our numbers are going down while the big metropolitan areas in Texas are going up, and this is exactly the reason why they're going up.
Right. So, last question for you: what are people in Austin going to be doing about this? I mean, because I agree with you, although I don't know if there's enough will there, including amongst some Republicans, I might add, to disregard the federal law in the manner that the federal government is disregarding federal law. But ultimately, I mean, because there's a lot of common ground here between Republicans and Democrats. You have Democrat mayors that have been screaming at the administration about this. Democrat representatives here in the Republic of Texas yelling about this. So what are they doing in Austin to mitigate this and get a handle on it?
The Democrats on the border want a border wall. You ask them, they will tell you they want a border wall until they go to Washington, D.C., and then they fall in line with the swamp up there. But what we are going to do about it, we typically spend $700 to $800 million on border security. We increased it. I'm on appropriations, myself and Matt Schaefer in the Freedom Caucus, and made it just imperative that we increase it to $1.2 billion. In a supplemental, we added another $1.8 billion so that we can build a real wall, not just a fence, but a real wall. But from there, we need to make sure and send a strong message to Governor Abbott that he has our support to absolutely close the border in defiance of anything that Joe Biden and the Democrats want. We've got to close it right now.
Yeah, definitely, especially if some of those penalties for transmission rates kick in. Texas State Representative Stephen Toth, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you. Thanks for your time today.
Great to see you, Dana. God bless you.
Mm-hmm. God bless you. Thank you. All right, folks, coming up, should we expect any kind of consequences for the administration? Because there's been a lot of failures, right? I mean, we heard from CENTCOM, from General McKenzie on Friday, oh, no, military discipline. Well, we're still hanging by the intelligence we have. And what about the border? What about, I mean, we could ask a lot of what abouts. Former U.S. Attorney Guy Lewis joins me to discuss this and more next. How much equity do you have in your home? Cybercrime experts are alerting homeowners that the more equity they have, the greater the chance that criminals could target them. Home title theft is one of the fastest growing crimes, and Home Title Lock, America's leader in home title protection, is warning homeowners that they could potentially be victims and not even know it. So, cyber thieves can search hundreds of public databases for high equity homes, find your home's online title, forge your signature stating that you sold your home, and take out loans with your equity. Insurance or common identity theft programs aren't going to cover it. Protect your most valuable asset. Register your address to see if you could potentially be a victim and receive a complete title history of your home, a $100 value for free. Visit HometitleLock.com. While it seems that President Biden is asleep at the wheel, a lot of mandates, mistakes, and missteps have happened just in the past few weeks. It's kind of overwhelming. So are there going to be any consequences? And also the indictment, the Durham indictment of Democratic lawyer Michael Sussman. I'm really curious as to how this all unravels. Joining me now to discuss this is Guy Lewis, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. Guy, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your perspective today.
Thanks, Dana. Good to be here.
Of course. So the issue with these mandates, I know, for instance, we had the big battle over the eviction moratorium. I know that there's going to be a fight over the vaccine mandate as well. What do you see as being, well, let me put it this way. How successful do you think the administration is going to be in defending these edicts coming down from the president? Like, for instance, we'll just start with the vaccine mandate. I mean, what do you think that their chances are in being able to protect that as an order from Biden in court?
Listen, Dana, if past is prologue, Biden and his administration is going to continue to swing and miss. I mean, the vaccine mandates are turning out horribly for him. You see him, his litigation, his Department of Justice in front of the Supreme Court. They've lost over and over. They're losing in the federal courts over and over. Their record, frankly, is abysmal. It's horrible right now.
Yeah, and I realize too, and we've talked about it here, I've talked about it on my radio program as well. For instance, the big fight with the whether or not the Supreme Court has a precedent and they can successfully defend these forced mandates, and everybody goes to Jacobson v. Massachusetts, which that was a state statute. That wasn't a case of the federal government trying to demand that someone did, and it was a $5 fine, which I think is the equivalent of $150 now. There's just, to me, in my untrained non-lawyerly perspective, it just doesn't look like, at least on that issue, that the administration has a chance.
Look, trust your legal intuition is better than the Justice Department's legal expertise right now. So go with your gut, Dana. I mean, look at what they're doing. They are losing on eviction moratorium. They've lost in terms of the oil and gas leases down in Louisiana. In the Supreme Court, several cases, they've just lost over and over. In Arizona, the voting restrictions they've lost. When you remember a few months ago when Biden tried to institute this moratorium on eviction, the Supreme Court told him, hey, you're going to lose this. He said, you know what? I don't really know if I'm on legal ground. He did it anyway. And of course, months later, they lost. So really, I don't get it. You swear to uphold and defend the law, and there's a disconnect. There's a huge disconnect between the White House and the Justice Department.
I've been trying to, Guy, figure out a way to kind of to push back against the administration's border policies. I was speaking to a Texas state representative just a little bit earlier, and I know the big question that goes around is, well, why can't Texas Governor Greg Abbott, why can't he just send the National Guard down there or call the Texas Rangers and secure the border? And the answer is always, well, federal law. They can't do that because it's a federal law. But I'm curious as to, and this could be just a grotesque bastardization of this, but I'm curious as to whether or not, you could sort of reverse engineer that in a way. If you have federal policy that's highly damaging to a certain state and the state is having to use their own resources in order to deal with it. I mean, couldn't you just basically kind of do a quasi commandeering argument and say that this is sort of violating states' rights and state sovereignty to an extent as well?
Listen, you're making a good point. So you're going to see in Florida, where I am, is in basically we're border states. I mean, you see it visually in Texas, but we're feeling it here when Governor DeSantis basically says to Biden and his people, look, you're overwhelming us right now. So I think, look, to answer your question specifically, I think you're going to see states successfully walk into the United States federal court and seek injunctive relief against the federal government. Look, they're not following the law. They're not doing their job. It was just like, Dana, when Biden came in, and what did he do? One of the first things he did is he put a 100-day moratorium on deportation. You'll remember that. And of course, they walked into federal court, and the court said, look, that's not even close to constitutional. So despite the fact that they're swearing to uphold the law, they're just not doing it.
I wanted to change gears and ask you about this indictment that came through. Everybody's been talking about Durham, and everybody's been talking about this indicted Michael Sussman now, who was somebody who's working with Perkins Coie when all of that was going down with Hillary Clinton, Fusion GPS, taking this debunked Kremlin information and trying to pass it off to FISA as, this is the reason why we have to be able to surveil private citizens. So now he apparently was accused, he stands charged of lying to the FBI's counsel. And that, of course, that's one of the first things that came out just this past week. Talk to me a little bit about this, and because it feels like there's so much more. I'm sure that there's a lot more, that this is the tip of the iceberg. But I think I'm just curious as if they could even possibly be even more aggressive, because I was reading a really great piece by a friend of mine who was saying, well, it's kind of unusual to have, for one charge, 27 pages on this. However, and they were explaining that a little bit. But give me your perspective. I mean, how serious can this be for Sussman? How serious can this be overall for the DNC and Hillary Clinton that ultimately had contracted Perkins Coie?
Great question, and really the proof is in the pudding of the indictment. You read that 27 pages, and while yes, he got it in, he being Durham, got it in right under the statute of limitations before it expired. You read that indictment, and holy moly, Dana, it's a triad of illegality between the DNC, who was hiring Sussman to be their lawyer, the Hillary Clinton campaign, who was hiring Sussman to be their lawyer, and the FBI, as they were feeding information through Sussman to the FBI to set up this whole Russia fiasco. I mean, for 2 years, we were obsessed with it, and it was all a setup, and the 27 pages lays out exactly how they weaponized the FBI willingly, by the way, to go after Trump and Trump's supporters.
Do you think that there will be some more indictments coming down?
Good Lord, there should be. Listen, I know prosecutors we were slow, and sometimes we wanted every piece of evidence, but you can bet the lawyers on the other side, Dana, they're raising every kind of objection. I mean, it's shocking, really. Again, take a step back and think about what the questions I have when I read this indictment. Where does it, at whose footsteps does it end up? Who was calling the shots? Who was actually paying for and funding this very, very expensive proposition of hiring this big-time law firm to provide all this fake, phony, baloney information to the FBI? A lot of questions still unanswered.
I agree with you. Guy Lewis, thanks so much for your perspective on this, and we'll watch and see what other indictments come out. Everybody's been talking about the Durham stuff, but it's fine. I'm glad that he got it in before that. I think it was the 19th, that September 19th deadline. Boy, that was cutting it close. Guy, thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Got it.
Coming up, folks, Beto or Rourke? Robert O'Rourke. He's back to playing musical chairs with office positions. We must discuss this. Stay with us. Well, they say that third time is a charm. And for one politician who can charm the pants off randy middle-aged progressive women, it looks like he's ready to run it yet again for office. Who am I talking about? Everyone's favorite Irishman, Beto O'Rourke, of course. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, he shreds on a skateboard and he sounds like Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But wait, run for office again? What's he smoking? I mean, running for office and losing twice, that's not enough. Is he just going to go for every single open elected position? Is he going to go for land commissioner next? You could, and this is just a thought, he could just get a job. Now, the first time that he lost, the very white Robert O'Rourke, and that's Beto's real name, he lost to an actual Latino, Ted Cruz, even though he used his nickname Beto to appeal to Hispanic voters. He actually did that, America. You want to talk about appropriation? There you go. But as we know, you can't ever humiliate Democrats or hold them to consistent standards. It's impossible. So when Texas told him, no mas, for the very first time, Beto bravely went forward and he set his sights on the presidency, because why not, right? I mean, when you're a Democrat and you can't even win a statewide race, why not go for the national? Failure is a sign from heaven that you're heading in the right direction. But alas, it was not to be. Beto's run crashed and burned, and all those progressive moms, they weren't enough to carry heartthrobby. Really? Beto? Really, though? For real? It's like failure to launch. But again, that's not going to stop Beto from fulfilling his destiny. He's just looking around, finding what other seat can I run for? So apparently we're going to have to endure him running for office again. This time, though, he has his sights set on the governor's mansion. Cannot roll my eyes hard enough. I'm made of jokes right now. I'm going to just try to get through this. Now, Democrats, they're excited because they think that, well, Beto has a national following of other progressive slackers who are not dissuaded by his knack for losing or his inability to actually keep a job in the private sector. No, they believe in the Beto, right? And I don't know, maybe his promise to drive sober from now on. And the Democrats also like Robert Beto O'Rourke because he can tap into the national fundraising network, because that's what they want him to do. Man, stay back, ladies, okay? Seriously. Everybody, he's got a whole army of stands that come at me on social media every time I say his name. Fun fact, if you stand in your bathroom and you turn off the lights, fun Halloween trick, and you say Beto 3 times in the mirror, he'll appear behind you, poorly playing Wonderwall on an acoustic guitar. True. Democrats don't mind. They don't, I guess, are they encouraging this? I actually haven't seen anyone actually actively encouraging him to do this, because he could be a wrench in the plans for another Democrat that they would like to run. But if they're actually serious about him running and they're getting behind him, that to me is one of the worst signs you could ever see for the Democrat Party, because that means they don't have a bench, right? No, Beto's going to act like he is just raw political genius and a comeback story for the ages. It's the story of a politician never giving up when Texas is saying, dear God, go away. And now the Beto has been all about open borders and taking all your guns and doing other things too. I don't really know what else he said. Does he have like any kind of budget? The man's never held a job in the private sector. I'm sorry, he wrote short stories and worked at the businesses that his family owned because his family gave him jobs working in those businesses. So when hundreds of thousands of people are pouring over the border in Texas, not sure when you want open borders too, and you've like actually pushed that, I'm not sure that's a winning position to run, especially at a time like this. But open borders Beto, he can still rely on his charm and his epic bro speak. In fact, a new poll shows that there's a glimmer of hope for Beto. The Dallas Morning News, which I don't trust this poll at all, or that publication, shows that O'Rourke has narrowed the gap with Abbott in a complete fantasy matchup. No one believes this. I don't even want to read these numbers because no one believes this. So is it going to be 3 times the charm, or will it be 3 strikes and you're out for Beto? This is his job. He found his new job. His new calling in life is to consistently run and lose offices. He wants to run for offices that he's going to lose, because you can make a lot of money fundraising. But I'm just trying to think, what is next for a guy who's only worked at his family's furniture stores and then wrote short stories for a while when he wasn't playing in a cover band, dressing as a furry, and then trying to leave the scene of a drunk driving accident? Like what? I mean, maybe like driving for Uber isn't the best for him, but time will tell. We'll see. Folks, that does it for us tonight. I'm trying to limit myself. I could go on for another hour just on that subject alone, making fun of it. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, and don't bend the knee.